3 years of the overthrow of Idi Amin Dada,
yes.
And Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere and the United Republic of Tanzania, of course, were very pivotal in that particular event in liberating this country of Uganda.
It's not only liberating Uganda, but quite a number of countries.
Exactly, but for ours, for
yes,
Uganda as a country. And just before President Dr. John Pombe Magufuli died, he was supposed to visit Uganda on the 11th of April last year. He didn't come, but Mama Samia Hassan Suluhu, and I think that was her first visit as president of the country. Yes, her first visit was here to Uganda. And I also think the late Magufuli's first visit, I think, was also in Uganda. Where did he go first?
Also, his first visit was in Uganda.
First in Uganda.
You know, Uganda and Tanzania, we've had such a historical connection. Going down actually to even the pre-colonial days. That's why you find that actually the people in Uganda, especially the northern part of Tanzania, and those are in that part that borders Tanzania or from Uganda, you find they actually one and the same in terms of culture, in terms of dialect, in terms of the whole life.
Okay, well, that's very important, and we will have Comrade on Zoom here. We'll have the ambassador of the ambassador of Tanzania here in Uganda, Comrade Balozi,
Dr. Mlima.
Dr. Mlima.
Yeah,
we will have him. We've had him here before. He's interacting with us on Pan-African Friday. But we'll keep and continue. But just before they all get into the conversation, why would we even talk about Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere 100 years later? It still happens. South Africa's Nelson Madiba Mandela, Rodilala, is they celebrate the Mandela Day, and every year, I think it is in June somewhere, the United Nations decided that we observe 67 minutes, 67 minutes of that day, to at least do something in the community, either slash or clean or do that, the Mandela Day, and that's where we're going. Does this help us? Does this add on to us? Does this, looking at Tanzania and Nyerere, and of course, the broader Africa?
Well, when we look at Nyerere as only being Tanzanian, I think that's when we miss a point. Of course, we can also say that Tanzania gave him that platform that he managed to bring out his very best to make a serious contribution to the continent. But let's look at Nyerere, why he's looked at as one of the greatest, among the greatest leaders we have in the we have on the continent. That he was the first person to make a step in integrating Africa. That is when Tanganyika and Zanzibar successfully merged to form Tanzania. That was, he became the very first person. Then secondly, he was the first person also to declare an African language as the official and national language, that is Swahili. Today as we speak, Kiswahili is now a working language of the African Union and a language of the Pan-African language of wider communication for the Africans on the continent and in the diaspora. So this is also some other achievement that we also tag to Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Then the other achievement that also we also have to look at is that he took a risk of hosting the African Liberation Committee, the Africa organization, OAU, Organization of African Unity, when they felt that there are some countries in the southern part of the continent that were not liberated. So they looked for a country that would host the Liberation Committee, a center that would be used to plan and facilitate the liberation of countries in Southern Africa. And Nyerere took up that role of coming up, of getting a home for all these freedom movements in Southern Africa. And actually that is why most countries in Southern Africa, whenever they have their independence, they always come to, they're celebrating their independence, they always come to Tanzania because they remember where they had camps. That we did, this is where we had our camp, our liberation camp. You talk of Mozambique, you talk of Zimbabwe, you talk of South Africa itself. So all these countries had camps within Tanzania. Now, when you come to Uganda, definitely in Uganda, the role of Julius Nyerere is quite I mean, we can't say that we can discuss it in an hour or two, because beginning from hosting Ugandan exiles, those were students that had been chased away from Makerere, who ran from Makerere, fearing for their life. When they reached Tanzania, they were integrated.
They were allowed to
the likes of the late
Professor Mtebile.
Professor Mtebile. So many of them that when they reached Tanzania, they were reintegrated into the education system, and they managed to actually study. So there are a number of issues, and that group that went to Tanzania was organized. The Ugandans in Tanzania were organized, and once they got organized, they were facilitated by Tanzania to come and overthrow a dictatorship and then usher in now a new kind of dispensation. Of course, there were a lot of disagreements that 5 years down the road again, President Yoweri Museveni managed to really totally liberate now the country.
Okay, well, that's very important. But you know, when we talk about these days, when we talk about these issues, when we talk about Nyerere, when we talk about Mandela, when we talk about all these Pan-Africans that we can list them forever, we can talk about them, their role, their anything. They had an Africa that we're looking at. They had an Africa that they had in their mind, that they had in their dreams. When you look at the breed of the leadership today, especially the young generation, and I'm looking at ourselves, the people today in our positions of power, they may not be presidents of countries, but they could be somewhere as legislators, they could be somewhere, you know, running affairs of their own states, people who are into the legal fraternity, people who are into the military, etc. Do they have anything that would bring the Africa of the Mandelas, the Africa of the Nyereres, the Africa of, look at all of them. Just go to Tanzania. Look at Tanzania now, away from the Chama Cha Mapinduzi, the party that Mwalimu Kambarage left with them. But look at all the other parties. The Civil Unity Front, for example, CAF. Look at ACT Wazalendo. Look at Chadema. Look at all these parties. Look at the young men in there, the Freemen in Boas. Look at the Zito Kabwes. Do they, can they live to the dream of Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere? Because if Nyerere was here and if somebody was still strong at 100 years and they've not died, maybe they would have done some things. Do we, the Africans today, especially the young Africans today, have these aspirations that the Kambarage Nyereres of this world had?
Yeah, I think we still have Africans who still have the same dream like that of Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere, the Nkrumahs and the rest. Perhaps we can say maybe they have not been given opportunity to showcase their ability to do that. But also we can also appreciate the fact that times have changed. Yes, the times of Nyerere, when they were actually liberating the country, the aspirations and interests of the Africans at that time were different. Now we're into a global village. And of course also the forces at that time are not the forces that we really have today, because during that time they really had the forces of the Cold War, the East and the West. Yes, but now you see these are some of the forces that are no longer at play. Now we totally have different forces at play. So I can say that yes, we have a number of people who really share the same vision, though perhaps they have not been given opportunity to bring it out. Yeah, but also in the leadership, we also have people really who still have who share the same vision. For example, the late Muammar Gaddafi also shared the same vision with the likes of Nkrumah, the likes of Nyerere, that Africa for Africans, and indeed they must ensure that we have an Africa that works for everyone. Just like Nyerere did say that education is not a vessel to fight, is not a vessel for one to get rid of poverty, to one to overcome poverty, but it is a vessel for one to fight poverty. So education should be used as a vessel to fight poverty, not as a vessel to get somebody out of poverty. I think that's why most graduates get disappointed, others killing themselves, because they are told that once you graduate, everything is fine. Little knowing that once you graduate, now that is the beginning of the battle, that's the beginning of the war. You're beginning a protracted war against against poverty.
Okay. When Mama Samia Hassan Suluhu, the president now of the United Republic of Tanzania, was speaking to Tanzanians at the Nyerere Leadership School in Chibaha, he actually told them to live the dream of Mwalimu Nyerere of self-dependence and, of course, doing what they can do to ensure that there is that economic independence. And let's just look at that. For example, who wouldn't want that? Can the Tanzanians achieve it? And if yes, they can, how about us here? Now, talking about self-dependence, these are some of the aspirations that Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere was looking at. Now, let's broaden it, because he was not only for Tanzania, but he was for Africa broadly. Can we achieve self-dependence when we have issues like, for example, today they tell you we have our AU headquarters in Addis Ababa that we could not build as ourselves. Come to the community here, where we have the East African community, and you have partner states or members who cannot contribute or pay their annual subscriptions to just that. Now, we want to have a secretariat at Arusha running and managing our affairs as the East African community, but yet again, we want some other person somewhere to finance, to fund, and to sustain our secretariat. Can we achieve these things if we are the African Union and we are not facilitating our own affairs? Somebody has to come and build for us headquarters. Somebody has to come and maybe pay for our benchmarking trips and anything. Somebody has to come in and do all these things. Can we achieve that dream when we are not economically self-dependent?
Well, you know, it was Frantz Fanon who said that engaging the enemy is not totally compromising your principles. Yeah, because ideally, even when you look at the fast tracking of the East African Federation, the conferences, the meeting, were being sponsored by Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, which is a German NGO. So ideally, we must also understand that for us to develop, we must also get people who have the same thinking with us. And the people who have the same thinking with us may not necessarily be Africans. You may find that there are agencies, the organizations in Europe that mean well, that mean good for Africa. But that said, there is every need for Africans, especially the leadership, so that the continent can move away from being a begging continent now to a continent that sustains itself. And this can only be done when we have a leadership across the continent that is accountable to the people. A leadership, for example, Thomas Sankara used to say that, do we want champagnes for the few or good water for everyone?
For everybody.
Yes, you see, so these are issues. So we have now, it goes back to our leadership. Do we have a leadership that thinks in terms of having champagne for very few people,
or
clean water for everyone? So it means that therefore that we need a leadership on the continent that sacrifices, and this is what Nyerere stood for. That you find that even when he was head of state, but his children would go to these normal schools. They would walk to school and come back home. That even as a head of state, he did not build a house in Butiama. It's a house that was built after he had retired. It was government thanking him. So he's not somebody who was in for amassing wealth on behalf or maybe against the over and above the development of his own country. So these are some of the things that the leaders across the continent. It is a departure from people like Mobutu, who owned streets in Paris, in Brussels, you get it, and yet Congo remained undeveloped as it is today. But you find that he said, look here, we must use every penny for the development of the people there.
Okay, Dr. Aziz Mlima is right now with us on Zoom. Let's welcome him to the conversation. Dr. Aziz Mlima is the ambassador, Tanzania's an ambassador here in Uganda. Dr. Aziz, karibu, and if you can hear us, if you can see us, please come to the conversation. Let's get to you and hear from you.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us back? We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry for the last minute changes. I came to Makerere Julius Nyerere Leadership Center at Makerere University, hoping that everything will take place from here. But anyway, today we are, as you know, we are celebrating 100 years of 100 years anniversary of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage, and we have gathered here at the Julius Nyerere Leadership Center as part of that celebration. Mwalimu can be remembered for many things. The independence of Tanganyika and the union of Tanganyika and Zanzibar to form the United Republic of Tanzania, but also his efforts to fight states. As you know, Mwalimu was instrumental in the as a founding father of the Organization of African Unity, together with other leaders, the Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, and the rest of the leaders of Africa during those days. But also, he championed, while working together with President Jomo Kenyatta, Milton Obote, to form the East African Community, the first one. And since 1962, Mwalimu invited freedom fighters from southern part of Africa to be based in Tanzania, and underwent military training there to go and fight for the independence. So at that time we had freedom fighters from Mozambique, Angola, Southwest Africa, which is Namibia today, Southern Rhodesia, and Northern Rhodesia, and some from Malawi. And those countries became independent in different times. But most of the countries which Mwalimu supported got independence in 1975. That is the Mozambique, Angola, and as far as Guinea-Bissau, there, of course, the Guinea-Bissau, they didn't have any Kenya, but they were somehow supported by Mwalimu in a different effort. And Mwalimu was also key in the formation of what is known as frontline states. He was the chairman of Liberation Committee, which was based in Dar es Salaam under General Hashim Bita. And based on that effort of the Liberation Committee and the frontline states, so many other countries became independent, including Seychelles, Zimbabwe, Namibia, the end of apartheid in South Africa, Mozambique itself, which became independent around 1975, together with Angola. And he supported so many efforts. And you know very well here in Uganda, during the time when the Ugandan people were struggling to remove Idi Amin, they team up with the Tanzanian under the support of Mwalimu, and then dictator Idi Amin was removed after he started to invade Tanzania. But that was a sad part of history. But you know, Mwalimu was also instrumental in spearheading the language of Kiswahili to unite the Tanzanians, Tanganyikans at that time, to use that one as a vehicle for freedom struggle. And that language united Tanzanians, and used that initiative of introducing Kiswahili as the language for fighting freedom managed to unify Tanzanians, to bring about peace, love, and stability in the country, because the language has managed to unite all the people and made sure that the Tanzanians identify themselves not by their tribes, but by their nationality as Tanzanians. So he managed to bring together 120 different tribes to become a nation. And those are the contributions which Mwalimu can be accorded with. But also, you know very well that before even Tanganyika became independent in 1961, around 1958, Mwalimu with others, they met in Mwanza Tanzania under PAFMESA. And that was the freedom fighting parties from, it was from Kenya, the KANU at that time, of Uganda, Malawi, Zambia, and that initiative from Mwanza managed to bring a lot of people, I mean a lot of these political parties to go and fight for their independence in various countries. And from that initiative and from that meeting in Mwanza 1958, many countries became independent from early 1960s. So Tanganyika became first, then Kenya, Uganda, Zambia 1964, Malawi. So those are contributions which Mali did, and the legacy which Mali left behind is the legacy of unity, peace and stability. But in Tanzania in particular, as you know, in 1985, they decided to in Kiswahili, said kungatuka, that is the word which he used, like he thought it was time now for building the system where Tanzanian could test another leader, and that is what we have until today. That was what Mwalimu contributed to Tanzania, and Tanzania has become what it is today because he had the vision, he had the conviction, and the passion to see that the country always stay together, and people could be could consider themselves as Tanzanian than their tribes or their religion. That is what I can say about Mwalimu legacy. At least for now.
In just 1 minute before we come back to studios, Ambassador Balozi, so what is happening in Tanzania? What other people in Tanzania are doing today to celebrate 100 years of Mwalimu Nyerere?
Prime Minister this morning is going to have a meeting to celebrate about Mwalimu, I mean to celebrate 100 years of 100 years anniversary of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. And this is basically what it is, and there are so many other activities around the country which are taking place in order to commemorate Mwalimu's contribution. And in Butiama, where it is the ancestral home of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, there are going to be some activities there as we speak.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let's come back to studios here. Talk to the Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Paul, Honorable Paul Musamali here in the East African Legislative Assembly. You're very welcome, Honorable Member.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. 100 years of Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere. You live and work in Arusha. That's where you are. What should we do about this day, and why should we even celebrate it?
Thank you very much, Ndugu Moderator. My brother Akola Mazima. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me this invitation to be part of this important celebration. Two, I want to apologize for coming late. I was picking children from school.
Oh, that's right.
And I thought I would do it faster. But along the way, I was unable to make it on time, and that's why I'm late by about 30 minutes. I want also to thank Balozi for for the good memory and the information he has given about Mwalimu. There are many things to talk about Mwalimu Nyerere, and you may, if you are not careful, you may lack where to start from, in as far as Mwalimu is concerned. But some of us, like for the case of Uganda, just as Balozi said, Mwalimu participated in what I would call the second liberation of Uganda after independence, and then we got problems with the military when Amin assumed the power here, and then the dictatorship and the problems that came as a result of Idi Amin. But Ugandans in the diaspora working hand in hand with Mwalimu, were able, and in fact he assisted us because we did have the arms, from what I read, because I was young. But from what I read, we were assisted with the training, with the accommodation. There are many Ugandans who lived in Tanzania, and they were trained and they were able to come and liberate Uganda again from Idi Amin. Remember that Uganda, from the time of Amin, it has not recovered up to now. We are just still struggling with the recovery because of what? Because of Amin. And assume Mwalimu had not played a role to have him ousted. Where would we be? Probably we would be having serious problems, more problems. So in terms of liberating Uganda, and not only Uganda, this was just along the way. But remember, as Balozi said, he had participated. At one time, I'm told that he even proposed to delay the independence of Tanzania until the rest of the African countries are liberated, such that we are all able to move together. But I think it was not possible at that time. But you can now see the spirit of a strong Pan-Africanist and a strong and visionary leader in Mwalimu. So now, if you are to delay, including probably economic problems which could be now affecting Tanzania, would be because of Mwalimu. You know, Mwalimu, when he chose to headquarter almost all liberation movements in sub-Saharan Africa, they were spending money, they were on training, on feeding, on accommodating liberators, including South Africans, ANC liberators. So you can now see that the role which Mwalimu was playing in terms of liberation of Africa. So the one of Uganda was just along the way. But the liberation of Africa, and that's how they came up with the rest of the Kwame Nkrumah's, Obote here, and the rest of the independence leaders to form Organization of African Union, which is now AU.
AU, the African Union eventually.
So he had a spirit of liberating Africa and the African people. And he did not wait that he had to transform Tanzania before he transforms others or liberates others. Tanzania at that time didn't have a lot of money, I guess so. But he says we shall use the little that is there to fight for the independence and for the freedom of the African people. And we really thank him so much for doing that. So that's why I'm telling you that Tanzania could have been staggered along the way because he was concentrating on the liberation of the African people.
Now that's our African history, and of course the intention is to help us achieve and get somewhere. You live in Uganda, I live in Uganda, we are in Uganda. We just had an election about a year ago. And in that election, if you notice, we had the National Resistance Movement Party and the candidate there, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. And the slogan for the NRM was securing the future. Now, all the other, about 10, except I think Katumba Oye, but all the others were talking about a renewed Uganda, a new Uganda, a brand new Uganda, a fresh Uganda, a revamped Uganda. All of them would talk about a new Uganda. And to some moment, we were thinking like we are going to overhaul anything called Uganda, then start all over again. So Musa Mali has to reinvent himself, Jaged has to reinvent himself, and all the things. Trying to portray or show that even history itself is not necessary to us. When you go to countries like China, Chairman Mao Zedong died as 43 years ago. He died, I think, in 1948. I beg your pardon, 1978. 43 years ago, Chairman Mao. But when you go to Mao's birthplace, the Butiama of Mao, now Mwalimu Kabarage is from Butiama, but when you go to Shao, I think the place is called Shao, in Gutamin somewhere, is you get there and find a 12-year-old today, a 7-year-old today, talking about Chairman Mao, who Mao was, the Lenins and etc. When you go to South Africa, Mandela Madiba is actually still there. We even have a day that we celebrate called the Mandela Day. And we have 67 minutes of that day to actually observe and do some community work and do many of these things. We have these things happening elsewhere. And the question would be to you as a legislator in the regional parliament and to the country of Uganda, do we have all these things that we can talk about? Because the young Ugandans today want things to start from where they've actually known stuff. This is when we knew things. It is my first time to vote, so my life in Uganda starts when I went to the ballot to vote. So what does 100 years of Nyerere mean?
Well, just like you have said, different countries with different history, which is peculiar to those particular countries. If you are to start with Tanzania itself, for me, if I were to choose, apart from Uganda, any other country where I would want to change and become a citizen, I would change to go to become a Tanzanian. And the reason is because of Mwalimu Nyerere. And I'm happy with the people of Tanzania and the leadership of Tanzania in that when you go, if you go to any office in Tanzania, you will start with the sitting president, and the next portrait you see is that of Mwalimu Nyerere. In every office. That is what now our Tanzanian ndugu zetu wa Tanzania, that's what they're doing to keep the legacy of Mwalimu. For me, we are struggling, as you are aware, that the African people were Balkanized through colonization. And Mwalimu played his part in terms of putting a building block on reunification of the African people. When they started with the African Union and then the East Africa, let's go with the East African community first of all. Remember the first community, which was around for about 10 years. But only within 10 years, the people of East Africa were one. The people of East Africa were one. And we were trying to dismantle these artificial boundaries that were created by the colonialists. As you are aware, here, we have more Ugandans in Congo who are Bakonjo. There are more in Congo than those who are in Uganda.
It's true.
We have, for me, I come from Eastern Uganda in Mbale. We have more Bagishu in Kenya
than we have
those of us who are in Uganda.
The Wetangulas the other side.
The Wetangulas the other side. Because for me, when I go to Kakamega, to Bungoma, to Webuye, I am at home. And there are 6 million there, and for us here we are 1.5. But that was...
They are 4 times more than you.
Yes. But that was the work which was done by the colonialists. Now, why we celebrate Nyerere? That he says we have to do with this
artificial boundaries
and bring our people back. That undugu, fraternity. Then the issue of security. Remember that together, united we stand, and divided we fall. Together we are able to fight threats. But one thing which I want you to pick quickly about Mwalimu, like I told you, there are many attributes. You may fail to start. You may fail where to start from. But what I would talk about, as Balozi said, about unity and nationhood of the people of Tanzania. We start with Tanzania. By the way, he was in power for only 24 years. He left power in 24 years. But within 20 years of his leadership, Tanzania had a language, and everybody was speaking Swahili.
And actually people think there is no other language in Tanzania from Swahili.
Of course, that is what people think. But for us who have had the benefit of living there.
In Tanzania.
Yes. These languages are there. The tribes are also there. But people do not proud themselves in such because they are they cannot help them.
They are bigger than those small enclaves.
The Tanzania is bigger than those smaller tribes of theirs. You get it? And that was the work of Mwalimu. Helped the country to unite and develop into a nation. These countries of ours here, Uganda, Kenya, here, you hear people saying that our nation. Uganda is not a nation. This was a nation state. But the other one, Tanzania, is a nation. Because whether you are in Mtwara, whether you are in Tanga, whether in Mwanza here, you are in Dar es Salaam, they are the same. Let me just share with you a light moment. We were being trained in the East African Uongozi Leadership Institute in Dar es Salaam. And then we went to Zanzibar. They took us to Zanzibar. While we were in the market, someone in the neighborhood was speaking his language with another person.
Not Kiswahili?
Not Kiswahili. And he was speaking that language. Now, then someone else who was standing at a distance started shouting at him,
What is that you're speaking?
what is that you are doing? What is that you are speaking? We have a language here.
Kiswahili, zungumza Kiswahili.
He just said we have a language here of this country. What are you speaking?
So this person was speaking what would be like Erugisu of sorts. Erugisu or Lusamia or Lusamruteso or Uganda.
He was speaking. He said, no, shut up. And the other one did not attack this one. He instead apologized. Said, I'm sorry. And he apologized, of course, in Swahili now. So he was sorry. And then he went. You see? And you see, you will get even people in the same family.
Where people don't struggle to say, why are you
stopping me from
I am a Mumasaba.
Why are you this? But that's what that was in 2003. And he says, no. And the person apologized. So we have it. Now you can now see, and that was the work of Mwalimu. You can see what we use in Uganda, how we are struggling. And we are even getting, we are writing dictionaries in our languages. These languages, we can write them, we can do them in our villages there, but not in a country. In a country, they have worked to divide us, not to unite us. So what we need to do, given the fact that the East African heads of summit, the presidents of East Africa, took a decision that Kiswahili is a lingua franca. That's even in the Treaty of East Africa. But they also added that it's supposed to be one of the official languages to be used in the
transaction of our businesses.
So what we need to do is, as the East Africa community, there is what we call the East African Kiswahili Commission, which is responsible for propagating the Kiswahili in East Africa. So what we need to do is we want this commission to do its work, which Nyerere did, such that we have a language to do away with these issues of segregating ourselves based on tribes and language.
Okay, in the interest of time, let me go to Makerere University, Kampala, and hear from the director for Nyerere Leadership Institute, and Dr. Simba, if you can hear me, and Dr. Mwanga, just right there, if you are on Zoom now. Time is running out, but we could just have a few minutes with you to talk about Mwalimu Nyerere. Doctors, are you there? Dr. Mwanga? Is Dr. Mwanga for me there, or Dr. Simba? Okay. I'm told they are not on here. And if Ambassador Aziz Mlima is still with me, Ambassador, just come and say your final comments before we get out of studios.
Organizing such an event and give Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere some time to remember his legacy and his contribution to Tanzania, East Africa, and the African continent. So that is a very kind of you. But also I can see Dr. Simba is just next to me here.
Ah, is he there with you?
Yeah, he's here with me. So maybe I can pass the phone to him if you allow me. Dr. Simba is just next to me here. So let
me have Dr. Simba.
Okay, Dr. Simba is right here. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Simba, karibu. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to the conversation. Speak to us about Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere Day, 100 years of Mwalimu Nyerere. What do we learn from this and what do we take from this? What are the lessons for us as young Africans today?
Well, so there are a lot of lessons. One is that he was a great thinker. That is what I want to start with, and speaking as a scholar at Makerere University, because when we teach political philosophy, the first African political thinker, hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Continue, carry on. We can hear you.
Yeah, the first political thinker we normally discuss, African political thinker, is Nyerere. He had fantastic views on African socialism, African notions of democracy, notions of self-reliance, how to develop without foreign aid, though nowadays that is the norm. Then
Oh, okay. Dr. Simba, they had a problem. You need technology. Yeah, technology. Just refresh your gadget and come back to the conversation and then maybe get back to us because we needed to have that conversation to carry on. Ndugu Wakol, you've heard from the Honorable Musa Amali here, his submission and the passion that he has. And of course, there are not many Africans I could think, or many Ugandans at that, who want to think beyond the boundaries of Uganda, beyond our communities, beyond our enclaves and tribes, and these small groupings that we have.
Well, thank you very much. Honorable Musamali did talk about the East African Swahili Commission. Been lucky that I've participated in activities of the East African Swahili Commission since its inception. Actually, a number of times I've represented the media in Uganda. But on the issue of Swahili in Tanzania, during Nyerere's time, there was a legislation that was passed that where there are two or more Tanzanians, it is a crime to speak a language that other people don't hear. So that is why any Tanzanian, once you're 2 or 3, it is by law that you have to use Swahili. And once you're caught using a language which other people do not understand, it is a crime. And that is how it helped the growth of Swahili. Just the same thing with Jomo Kenyatta, the same thing. In Mombasa, when he came up with a declaration of supporting Swahili, because those are some of the things he said, look here, as leaders, every leader must learn and address the people in Swahili. So away from that, I think every other time I get a problem that we have, whenever we have presidential elections, that you have people who think that they are going to all of a sudden change Uganda's history. I mean, countries and communities that have grown have continuity. That even much as in 79, we had a second liberation, but that did not wash away the 9 years of Idi Amin. That is part of our history. That even when 1986 7 came in with the third liberation, that did not wash away the history that we had, the other presidents with whatever they did. So we must always learn to continue, but pick lessons from our history and then move on. So this is why you find that in some other countries, that their history will always be preserved. And that is why people like Mandela are still respected. That because there were some Africans who thought that now Mandela coming into power, he's going all of a sudden to start afresh. And it was like, no, look here. And that's how they came up with Okubuyisana. We have to reconcile and move forward as a group. So now, coming back to Mwalimu Nyerere, there are so many things that even when he left power, he remained very, very active. He remained very, very active on matters of regional integration. He remained very, very active in ensuring that there is peace within the Great Lakes region. And on the academic point of view, one, he came up with the Ujamaa philosophy, which is actually being taught and studied, looking at his cons and pros. We looked at, he also translated Shakespeare's books. Actually, I've had the chance to read both of his books, Merchant of Venice, which he translated as Mabiparo Venice. He also translated Julius Caesar, which he translated as Julius Caesare. So he was such a scholar that he even went into writing books, and which books are being used. Because when you look at on every syllabus actually in Uganda, the Swahili syllabus, either you'll find the Mabiparo Venice or Julius Caesare, which were translated by him.
Ambassador Aziz, Balozi, if your connection is back, please come back to the conversation, because we're still talking to Ndugu Simba before we lost connection. Are you with us still? Unasikia vizuri?
Yes, nawasikia.
Baraka.
Nawasikia, but I think you asked for Dr. Susie Mwanga. She's here with me.
Okay, yeah, because I was also expecting to have her. Can we have her? Good morning, Dr. Susie.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're happy to have you. Thank you for joining us live on UBC TV this morning. And we are looking and talking about Mwalimu Julius Nyerere 100 years later. Let's hear from you. What thoughts do you have about this particular day, and how do you think the rest of us as Africans should embrace and celebrate this day?
Thank you very much, first of all, for having me on your program, and for covering the celebrations that we're having at Makerere University. The Julius Nyerere Leadership Center, as you are aware, is a presidential initiative. But mostly, I think today, we're here joining the Tanzanian community, not only in Uganda, but elsewhere, to celebrate, I wouldn't want to call him a legend, but definitely an icon in terms of leadership, in terms of Pan-African thinking. And the message today for us is that, you know, legacies are made, but they need to be allowed to not only grow, but to be followed up by younger people. So today's message should be, what can young people learn from the philosophy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere about servant leadership, about serving communities, and about unity, especially not only within our own countries, but within the continent as well.
The philosophy of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, and coming back to Uganda, because when you look at Mwalimu Nyerere's Ujamaa philosophy and lots of things, we will talk about the language itself. There's been this conversation of countries cannot develop in foreign languages, and we've taken examples of China, we've taken examples of Japan, we've taken examples of Korea, we've taken examples of countries, the Asian tigers. And we've had all this conversation. Now, when you go to Tanzania, they took a stride and a step ahead and embraced Kiswahili, which we're now just trying to get to. Back home in Uganda, we have a conversation of teaching our native languages. We had that, and we're talking to the National Curriculum Development Center, telling them we need to start instructing, and the conversation was, how are we going to explain chemistry in Lumasaba? How are we going to explain chemistry in Rutoro maybe? How shall we explain these things in Luganda, etc.? And you find that we still cling to our languages, our traditions, etc., which is not the case with Mwalimu's philosophy. So from what we learn and study from Kambarage Nyerere, Mwalimu, whom we're celebrating today, do you see us as achieving that as the rest of Africa?
It's certainly something that we should strive for. I think that it's impossible to say that because you wish it, it happens. There needs to be planning. I know that within the education system, attempts have been made to teach in the local languages, but then teachers must be trained to do that. I think that over and above speaking the same language, I think that maybe we should embrace the higher philosophy, if you will, about unity. irrespective of where you're coming from, irrespective of who you are, but your ability to think of yourself as a Ugandan, as an East African. And I think that slowly, if you see the way in which students interact here, we are getting there. It's baby steps, but I think that it's something that should be nurtured. It's not going to happen automatically, but the idea that we are one, that we share a destiny, that we, and I think post-COVID, more and more, we've come to the awareness that we're alone, and we only have each other to rely on. And yes, it's important that we strengthen those links and relationships in order to be able to develop, not only as Ugandans, but as East Africans, and largely as Pan-Africans.
Yeah, let's talk about the Kambarage Nyerere, the Mwalimu Julius Leadership Institute at Makerere University. From inception to where we are today, what are the things that you talk about and say, yes, the rationale for having the institute was X, Y, or Z, and this was our expectation, and this is actually what we're living, to see that we achieve that. So even if we give it another 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 50 years, we will be able to get there.
I think at inception, the idea was to have a center that has as its underlying philosophy, not only this idea of servant leadership. Yes, 4 years after the president launched the Julius Nyerere Leadership Center, I'm happy to say that we have made steady progress. We've done research because that is one of our core mandates. We have trained graduating students because we had a gap between your degree and the workplace. We have established linkages not only with the Nyerere Foundation in Tanzania, but with sister foundations and organizations in Arusha. We are currently exploring our ability to reach out beyond the East African region to link with other organizations that have the same ideals of Pan-Africanism and unity. So 4 years after it was launched, I think that, of course, we are not there yet. It takes a while, but I think that we are actually making very good progress, and we'll continue to do so until we achieve our goals.
Okay, thank you very much. Is Dr. Mwanga just right there with you? I beg your pardon, Dr. Simba. Is Dr. Simba just there? Is he still there with you?
Yes, Dr. Simba is still here.
Okay.
And thank you very much. I must now go and tend to our guests. But
okay.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Okay.
And I will leave you with Dr. Simba.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your thoughts and, of course, for your input to our program today as we celebrate and talk about Dr. Mwalimu Nyerere's 100 years today. Dr. Simba, come to the conversation here, and I just need to know from you, what are we doing to inculcate the philosophy, the ideals of Mwalimu Nyerere in the young Africans today? Because Mwalimu Nyerere did not start at 70, he did not start at 80, he did not start at the ages where he died. He started much earlier and younger than we all attest. What are we doing with Africans today to pick the spirit of Mwalimu Nyerere?
Yeah, the first thing, just from the view of Makerere University, is to have him taught in class. And I appreciate that for the last 40 years, he's one of our greatest thinkers. We have normally a class of over 300 students who are exposed to his ideas. You are also right. You are also right to say he started these ideas and ways of life when he was young. I've been going through his life at Makerere University, and he joined Makerere University at the age of 21. Interesting enough, at that age of 21, he wrote a very important essay reflecting on Stuart Mill's essay on subjugation of women, which is very critical as far as the liberation of women is concerned. So whereas the women movements has just picked up now. By 1943, Nyerere was already discussing issues of women emancipation and liberation. So the one thing to do to the young community, first of all, is to make sure that they know who Nyerere was as a leader and as a human being.
Okay, thank you very much. But yet again, there are lots of things now. We see the world changing. There is globalization. There is all these competing interests, etc. And the economic bit or connotation, you notice that the breed of politicians today are more economically motivated than ideologically oriented. How do you think and how do we intend to achieve the Africa that Mwalimu Nyerere, Sekou Toure, the Osajefo Kwame Nkrumah and others wanted to see? Where is that Africa that the Nyerere is advocated for with the breed of the politicians today?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. He was a leader possibly beyond his times. You are right to say that there are lots of challenges, globalization and other things. But the most important thing what Nyerere did for us was to put his ideas in writing. So we shall continue talking about them and expounding them. So the leaders who may want to pursue his ideas, but even before I don't go to that, look, the notion of African unity. During 1963, there were two blocks, Casablanca bloc and the Monrovia. One wanted a very quick unification. Then another one wanted loose unification. Nyerere had a third position, which at that time was not even being discussed. He argued that for Africa to get united, we have to start with regional blocks, make them strong, and these regional blocks will be the basis of a larger African Union. And I think that's what is working now. Efforts are being made to strengthen regional blocks. We are very happy that DRC has come on board. So after strengthening the regional bloc, ECOWAS, East African Community, SADC, and so on, in some time, also it may not be our generation, a formidable African continent unity will be achieved. Those were Nyerere's ideas. So much as some leaders may not be pursuing what he said, the idea of selflessness, but still a lot of things are being picked up.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Simba.
And also, yes.
No, continue the submission before I come in.
Okay, so I was saying one other thing which I wanted to add it, his belief in unity without regard to ethnicity and other things. African Union, to the best of my knowledge, African peer review mechanism, is adopting what President Museveni one time called bottlenecks for African development, 13 bottlenecks. And bottleneck number one is exactly what Nyerere said, that for Africa to progress, we have to go beyond tribes. And so therefore, when we are assessing progress among African states within the African peer review mechanism, the notion of how African states are going beyond tribes is very, very critical. So his ideas are still on. We may forget them once in a while, but they're still.
Okay.
Until we realize those which are great.
Okay, thank you very much. This would be for you, but I think you can share it with Ambassador Aziz just right there. You made a very good submission of talking about the regional blocks, and President Museveni espouses the same ideas of Mwalimu Nyerere over the regional blocks. Now, when you look at the continent, we have about eight regional blocks, and there is this one regional block, the ESC, which seems to be going ahead of all the others from what you see. We've now brought in the seventh member, the DRC, and what you hear about the ESC is not the same as you hear from the Arab Maghreb, from SADC, from IGAD, and etc. And there's also an overlap now of one country being to the other. Yet again, the regional blocks are more economically centered. It's more of economic coming together as opposed to that other integration that we're talking about. And the truth of the matter is also that we, the Wananchi, have integrated more than the countries have actually done that, because we have that integration of person to person in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Ndugu Musamali here from Yala was telling you, the Bukusu there and the Gisu here, the Bamasava, they have their own way of interaction. The other day, when we lost the Umukuka, we even had a delegation from Kenya, the Wetangulas, who came and were part of the celebrations and everything that happens there. So are we really on the right trajectory, even when you talk about strengthening the regional blocks, when we have regional blocks that actually are going ahead of the others?
Well, that is a natural process. First of all, we cannot be moving at the same pace. It's natural that some move faster than the others. And each region has its own contradictions, which has to be sorted out. We have to appreciate that. Of course, there's this other challenge you said, some countries belonging to different regional blocks. This has also to be understood contextually. I'll just give an example of United Republic of Tanzania, which is a critical member of East African Community, but which is also critical member of SADC. Given the role Tanzania played in the liberation of South Africa, it is natural that it has a role to play in SADC, but also in East African Community. We may look at that as a contradiction, but it's a way of, one way we can manage those sort of processes, contradictions. Otherwise, one bloc like East African Community moving ahead is positive. Other countries can learn from experiences of other blocks. We cannot move at the same pace because we have different histories, we have different contradictions.
Okay.
And also on the issue of communities integrating, that's very positive. And that's in line with the ideas of Nyerere. We are the same people, we should not look at each other from a tribal point of view. But quite important process which is going on as well is the economic linkages which are coming up within. Once these countries become united economically, and our leaders should focus on that, then the other process of political integration might come at a later stage.
Okay.
But the most important is uniting the people, then uniting the economies, and then the political processes can follow.
Let me hear Ambassador Mliman, his thoughts on that. Ndugu Balozi, let me hear your thoughts on the integration of blocks, the regional blocks, and of course the coming in of our seventh member, the DRC, a few days ago.
Yes. Regional bloc integration is a very important step in the total integration of the African continent. As Dr. Simba said, this was the original premise of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere during the time when there were these two different groups where there was a group which wanted the whole Africa to be united at once. I think that was under Kwame Nkrumah at that time, and the others like Mwalimu, who said that we should start to make sure that we have strong regional economic blocks, and then we can have full integration at a later stage. So the coming in of DRC, which is a member now of EAC and SADC, just like the way United Republic of Tanzania is, it's a very important addition to this step. And if we have more of that kind of integration, economic, political, and socially, it will reach a point whereby the countries within the African continent will be able to trade quite easily, to do more things together, and to have what we expect and what was expected by the founding father of this continent. As you can see, EAC have only 7 members now, but if you compare to the European Union, which has 27 member states, the EAC, if you go back to the EAC, which is started 1966 to 78, it was much stronger economic bloc than the Economic Cooperation of Europe at that time. EEC, I think that's what they used to call it, before the European Union today. The EAC, which you had here, was much stronger in terms of their integration at that time. As you know, we had a common currency, we had a common syllabus at the universities, and some of the universities like Makerere here specialized on the social sciences. Engineering was Nairobi, laws and economics was Dar es Salaam. So students were moving, you know, around within the continent, and that's why you had students like Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, Benjamin Mkapa, Mwai Kibaki, and Ali Hassan Mwinyi, and others who came to study here in Makerere University in Uganda. And you have so many Chief Justice from the region who went to University of Dar es Salaam, and so many other engineers who went to Nairobi. So East Africa integration and the steps which our founding fathers of the community at that time managed to bring about, as you know, at that time we used to have East African Airways. The postal authority were based, the headquarters was here in Uganda. The custom headquarters were in Dar es Salaam. Railway, I think it was in Tanzania. East African Airways headquarters was in Nairobi. And Arusha was the center and the headquarters of the East African community. That time, that was more efficient than what we see today in what, of course, the European Union is trying to go toward that direction. But we were there before. Unfortunately, the circumstances of that time and the geopolitics at that time, we found ourselves in crisis, and then the collapse of the first East African community was a fact. But we are glad that our leaders saw it fit to revive the community, and now we are welcoming new members. And I hope that the integration will be much faster, more efficient, and more productive. But we really need to, as the East African community, we need to put away our differences and try to see how we can work together more efficiently, more effectively, and more productively. But you cannot do that if you don't have peace and stability in the region. So we really need to make sure that the countries within the East African enjoy peace, stability, and all these important aspects of our integration. I'm certain that we're heading toward that direction, but a lot of work needs to be done.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's my submission.
Thank you very much. Let's come back to studios here and get back to the honorable member here, Mr. Musamali from the East African Legislative Assembly. Now, getting to the DRC, of course, these are all thoughts and the aspirations of Mwalimu Nyerere, whose day we're celebrating today, 100 years. You are at Iyala, and we now wait and expect to see another 9 members from the DRC yes. Coming on. Just looking at that, and the performance from the revamped ESC, then we saw Rwanda, Burundi come on board, then eventually we also had South Sudan coming on board. Now, having the DRC, the other day, you were in the press, not for the very good reasons, where you had the struggles for positions here, and Sudan is saying that, Uganda is saying this, Kenya is saying that. And it surprises us that even at that level, if you can't agree at that level, then what do you expect from the rest of us wananchi who are on the streets in Kampala, in Nairobi, in Dar es Salaam, in Juba, in Kigali or Bujumbura?
Thank you, Ndugu. The coming in of DRC into the community is a welcome move. And but the people of East Africa should not start by celebrating.
Again?
Yes. It's a welcome move. But just if I'm to build on what Barroso had just said, the collapse of the first union, the East African community, it was not by the design of the East African people, but it is because of the geopolitics of the time, and the interests of those who are not our friends, but they claim to be our friends. I'll give you an example. this M23, their guns were silent for about 10 years.
M23.
M23. As soon as the DRC signed to join
on the same day when we were welcoming the DRC,
as the DRC was welcoming, then the guns of M23 started.
Yes.
So we need to be very careful, we as the East African people. There are people who pretend to be our friends. There's a times, you know, it may not be a very good forum here, because some of these things I want to say when we are alone, when we are not being heard. But let me say it, that we need to move, and this was the vision of Mwalimu, that we can't develop ourselves if we are disunited, unless we move together as a united African people, starting with East Africa, then the rest will join, and the other blocks like that. You get it? So, something which we need to prepare ourselves with is to arm ourselves with knowledge that there are people who may not be interested in our integration. I'm not going to name them, but I'm sure you know them. And even whoever is listening.
Those who are not interested.
Those who are not interested in our integration, they are there. And we eat with them. They are not the Judas, the Iscariotes. We eat with them. So we need to be very careful about that. You also said that we were not, recently we were in the media not for very good reasons.
Yes.
Yes, it is very bad. For those who may not have known, they were fighting, the struggle was over the issue of job opportunities in the East African community. And when you talk of East African community, we are not talking about Arusha alone. These are all institutions of East Africa. They are in Uganda here, they are in Rwanda, they are in Burundi. It's only South Sudan which doesn't have any institution. So they were recruiting to fill these positions. But you know what, now even in the recruitment, there are guidelines. And these guys say that all the benefits of the community must be shared equitably. You get it? Now, when somebody who is responsible for recruitment sits and starts, these are the same tribal, these are the same things which Mwalimu didn't want. When you start now recruiting, and then you start recruiting either Ugandans because you are Ugandan, the one in charge of recruitment, you recruit Tanzanians because you are the one, or Kenyans because you are the one in charge of recruitment. Now, you are not different from one who is going to favor his people because he is from Bugisu, or is from Sukuma, or is from Luya. You get that? So these are the problems. However, one thing which I want the center, the Mwalimu Center of Excellence in Makerere, and the Mwalimu Foundation, what they are promoting is to help us and train the African people in the philosophy of Mwalimu, so that we believe in Mwalimu, and we believe in his philosophy, in his thoughts, and how he had wanted the African people to live. Now, that is how we are going to solve even those small problems we are having in Arusha. Because when these ones are recruiting and favoring others and leaving out others, but you are all the same people. Now, that's where the problem is. So you are diverting away from the vision of Mwalimu and the vision of all these leaders of ours who worked hard to re-establish the community. Because by working hard to re-establish the community in 1999, they wanted to sort out some of these problems. But you are also aware that we want to benefit from this integration. So we should not leave one partner state out of the integration. The bigger picture is for us to trade together. Yes, and live together. And marry together.
Yes. That's okay, and that's what President Muigai Kenyatta is actually saying.
Yes.
Go to Kenya and marry Luya. Come to Uganda and marry Mchiga. Then go to Sudan and marry Dinka. Let's marry one another for that integration.
But let me just add one thing. That this integration of ours, this vision of Mwalimu, will not move unless we who are in charge of who are in leadership now, at whatever level, even you in the media, myself as a legislator, Balozi there, the
Dr. Simba.
Dr. Simba is my lecturer, and the rest, whoever, we must prepare and train people. And we must also be aware that we must sacrifice. You brought the issue of people now more interested more in benefit now than of course, Mwalimu sacrificed. And you'll not be surprised that Mwalimu died with no money.
But it's not common. It's not common for you legislators today.
He had no wealth.
You rather even sell what you have to get to office because you'll get better than what you'll find there.
Yes.
And the first things you get to when you get there, you don't legislate to see how do we propel the integration.
So,
but how do we get money? We need a car. We need all these things. Even when you already have a car.
Now these are already distortions which are brought in by capitalism. However, what the institute,
yes,
the Center of Excellence to help us is to train leaders, train people. Now, when you train people who are thinking in terms of East Africa or in terms of Africa, they will know that just studying for these small things will not help them.
Exactly.
Will instead divide them.
Like we've always said, Sankara shunned champagne for a few and said it should be water for the majority.
Exactly.
And today we have leaders who are the opposite of Sankara, who say, I rather take the champagne. Those with water, those who want water, you will find your own
Now,
ways.
those are the majority, as per now, but that's why we are emphasizing that we should train. I'll give you an example like these our friends from Tanzania. I don't know whether that program is still ongoing. National service. Where they would be taken into national service. Young people, and then you go there, you serve, then you are serving in a different region. That is part of training. And that's what the rest of East Africans we should do. The rest of these other people from those of us from other partner states, we should learn. And if Tanzania is no longer pursuing that program, I would want to urge the leadership through Balozi here that back, and I will take interest now when I go back for duty to find out about that program. Now, let me wind up that point by emphasizing that the disorientation in terms of drinking champagne now, not water for everybody, is because of lack of ideological training. So we need to train our people and understand where we want to go.
Okay.
But one thing that we cannot train everybody. Let's train the leadership.
Okay.
At the level of the cabinet ministers, student leaders, name them. Let's train people.
Okay.
And the center should play a big role.
Okay.
Lastly, even the people, now that we are working on integrating, starting with the East African community as we are, bring one by one, we should be mindful of who occupies which position in the community, in the institutions of the community.
At Yala,
even the people, even if we are electing, I want to emphasize, even if we elect members to the East African Legislative Assembly, governments should play a role through their respective political parties in terms of vetting who qualifies to contest, such that even if you have 100 people contesting, you are sure that even if you are only out of the 100, the 9 you are sending, there are people you are going to rely on at the assembly, and they are going to pursue the agenda of integration, not individual interests, looking for jobs and so on and so forth.
looking for employment.
Even the people we are deploying at the community, either as a secretary general, a deputy secretary general, because remember, if we deploy people whom we don't know very well as partner states, you may be deploying a collaborator. Someone who is going to sit in decision-making organ of a community as either secretary general, but he is implementing the interest of other people. Let me just give you, whoever is listening and watching. As we talk now, East Africa is running a budget of annually of between 100 to 120 million dollars. But when you look at the contributions which every partner state contributes, it's a flat of about $8 million. 8 million, if you multiply 8 million by 6, you get what? I think about 48 million.
Yes, 8 by 6, 48.
About 48 million. Now you get 48 million, and the budget is 120. That means you are already less by, you are already operating below average. Because you are having about 45% of the budget. But remember, this money is not all paid at once. They don't. It
doesn't come together. It doesn't come at the same time.
Some will pay, then 30% or 40%, 50%, and so on and so forth. Now, you are building an economic bloc to compete with the European Union, to compete with the America. America is an economic bloc. USA. It's an amalgamation of states. To compete with China, but then again you are from here again going to China
to another economic bloc, to build your headquarters,
to build your headquarters, another economic bloc
to facilitate your affairs.
To facilitate your affairs. Let me tell you, they will facilitate your affairs. What they will support, they will come to support sensitization on HIV and AIDS, the environmental and whatever the case. They are not going to finance critical.
You are getting married, but you're running to another marriage somewhere to help you run your home.
Have you seen the challenge we have?
Yes, you are marrying to also get independence with your wife in the house, but you're also running to another person to support you run the family.
But the person you are running to, he was also interested in the same woman.
Oh, the one you want to run your marriage.
You are running to help you was interested in the same woman. So you have to be careful there.
And I think that's very true, because when you talk about that, when I look at Article 50 of the ESC Treaty, it is very clear, and this is what it says, that for us to elect a member of parliament, rather a member of the assembly, one of the qualifications is that they should have proven experience or interest in consolidating and furthering the aims and objectives of the community.
Exactly.
Now, we have so many people who do not even know anything about the ESC, but because they know it's a very small constituency for you to get to Iyala. Convince a few members of parliament, come as an independent, or convince a party, get the ticket, and once you are there, then, because it is first past the post affair, it's not a percentage thing, it is first past the post. So once you can convince a few people here, then you get it. And why are you there in the first place? Akol, we need to bring this to an end. But just before we go to Balozi, to sum it up there, let me hear your thoughts from the different submissions we've had from the doctors on Zoom, and of course the member of Iyala here in studios.
Well, I think very much, and his submission, Honorable Paul Msamali, brings us to Nyerere's way of doing things. That even when he was in power in Tanzania, he preferred working with the people he understood. That is why most of his students at St. Francis Pugu High School in Dar es Salaam, where he had taught after Makerere, he worked with them. For example, Benjamin Mkapa was a student of Nyerere. People like Pas Mseko was one time the Secretary General of TANU and the Speaker. Those were his students. And he ensured that he worked with that. I think that is why even you find that most of his projects succeeded, because he believed in mentorship. Even at regional level, you realize that people like President Yoweri Museveni are beneficiaries of that kind of mentorship, mentoring people so that they can really actually take up national leadership. What Ndugu Msamali is saying is very true. We are getting into elections of Iyala. But now, because some people have amassed wealth, no matter how, they feel they can bribe their way. And when they go to Arusha, they're totally an embarrassment. You know, I've always given an example of Sudan. I've had a chance of participating in a number of activities of ESC. Now, we have a new country called South Sudan, And each time there's an activity, they come with the new delegates. And we've always asked them, where is the continuity? If every time we're having a meeting,
New people every day.
new people are really coming. We even, you say, can you nominate permanent people to always at least sit on this commission, sit on this committee? And they will say, no. The other general said we should first consult him. So this time it is the other general sending the delegates. The next time to be another general. So that kind of zigzag kind of arrangement, and this is what I'm also seeing from Congo. I'm sorry, I'm not a prophet of doom, but the same thing, the same scenario, I'm actually also seeing of Congo. That as he said, we shouldn't celebrate because Congo, there are a number of power centers, and now you may not know because now you have a president who does not have majority in parliament. So implying that if they are to elect members of parliament for Yela, of course his party doesn't have, will not be having a representation. Now, even in these other organs, so you find that ideally the representation that will come from Congo most likely may be a representation that does not necessarily represent the government in Kinshasa, and that is also going to, and the interest of the government, yes, and that is actually going to be a serious problem.
Okay, okay, Balozi, just right there with us, if you're still with Dr. Simba, can we hear your parting shots with us before we let you go? Ambassador Aziz. Okay, technology is betraying them, and I think they could have made their way out, but that's why it is. Let's just conclude this. Ndugu Musamali.
Yes.
Yes.
What we need to learn from Mwalimu Nyerere is servant leadership, and that's what all of us must emulate. He sacrificed his best, including his own life, for the people. And that's why Tanzania is very unique in the whole of East Africa. You can see that the party, he started with another party, and then TANU, then yes, and then CCM. You can now see that CCM has still continued leading Tanzania, and I think in the right direction. So, but if Mwalimu had started that party because he had personal interests to promote or to have protected, I'm sure that party could have collapsed a long time ago. We would also learn from him his vision for a united people, irrespective of where they are from, like those of Tanzania. Remember, he says, okay, if we can't move with the bigger one, they started with the smaller one, the union of Zanzibar. With Zanzibar. So, at one time, there has been some challenges, but he says, whatever the case, even in a marriage, there will always be some challenges, but we will do what? Let's stick together, and we are there. And then probably, you maybe in terms of, if I may just add one small thing, in terms of his visionary leadership, he built a very strong army in Tanzania. In 1963 or 64, it was 64, there were mutinies in the whole of the East African states, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. For him, he said, now this is a colonial army. He disbanded it at the expense of even being overthrown. He disbanded it and built an army. For us here in Uganda, when we failed, instead we promoted them, and after promotion, what happened? We lost out of it. So we needed to learn from him. And then the very last one is appreciating that however best you are, even the best dancer leaves the what? The stage. If Mwalimu had wanted, he would still have ruled Tanzania
Up to 1999.
up to the time he died. But he said, no, I played my part. And I'm sure he understood the tides of the time. Remember that the ideological differences in the world, the capitalists and the socialists, and the Cold War. The Cold War is coming even to an end. So for that matter, I think he even understood, say now, I think we need someone who can take charge of Tanzania from where I am. And he retired. And that's why he remained even instrumental, even in his retirement. So this is what we need to learn as leaders. They play a role. There's a time when, you know, you will not dance the way you would dance at 20, when you are 50 or 70. I used to be one of the very good dancers.
Of Kadodi?
No, but right now, I can't dance the way I used to dance. So meaning that we need to learn something. Okay. And it's a very good, serious lesson.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ndugu, a call finally from you before you go.
Well, I must say that what we learned from Nyerere is leaving a mark. Is that when you read through his biography, you find that everywhere he went to teach, he actually was recruiting for the African cause. For example, when he taught at Tabora Boys, he recruited people like Kanyama Chume, who was very instrumental in the liberation of Malawi. So you can see that he really had that vision for Africa. Then the other issue that is that wherever actually he was, when he actually got into national and continental leadership, he ensured that he empowers those places. That, for example, wherever he taught, wherever he studied from, there is something to remember him. That actually so and so passed through this. So, and this brings us to also the new generation of leaders. There are some leaders who forget about their schools, where they studied from, because you need to go back and inspire the people. The students there, they feel inspired. They can also they share in your dream that maybe at one time they can also join you. So lastly, we say happy birthday, posthumous, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. We join the people of Tanzania. We join Pan-Africans in actually celebrating the life of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Ndugu Honorable Msamali. Thank you so much, our team on Zoom, Balozi, Aziz. Thank you so much, Dr. Simba, and thank you so much, Dr. Mwanga, for having allowed to join us here on this day, on extended Pan-African, I beg your pardon, on Good Morning Uganda Extra, not the Pan-African Friday, but Good Morning Uganda Extra. And of course, you've made us very proud by allowing to be here. You are one of our own, representing Uganda at the regional parliament, the legislature there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, for making way to be here. Because you live in Tanzania and stay in Tanzania and work in Tanzania and represent Uganda there, yes. It's good. And of course, to all the people right out there in Tanzania, the very many viewers that we have and the comrades and the friends that we have in Tanzania, tunawashukuru sana, and of course, wishing you a very good day today of Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere at 100. But yet again, today is Kabaka Ronald Mwenda Mutebi's birthday. He also celebrates 67 years of age, and Ndugu both Maxon of both is actually also his birthday. So all of you together, Sala Sajja Kabaka, tukwagaliza okuwangala, tukwagaliza okuwangala ku mazaalibwa ago ag'enkaaga mu omusanvu. Agobuto. But I think it is even bad, and why we don't have to call the Kabaka young. Well,
say agobuto because we want him to live longer.
Sichagala tuangaze muangaze ne omuto taba wange.
Well.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
We've got Total Energies as one of our biggest clients. We are currently involved in provision of resettlement services for the Tilenga project. For 6 resettlement packages, the services are tailored towards land acquisition and ensuring that the resettlement is undertaken in line with IFC Performance Standard 5 as well as national legislation. Given the complexity of the projects that we're working on, staff have had that professional development because of the challenge presented by the projects. And given that it's the oil and gas industry where the requirements are usually stringent, we have improved brand recognition because we're able to meet those standards. So most clients that come to us know that if we can meet the standards, then our brand is good.
Total Energies EP Uganda is committed to the empowerment of Ugandans to take an active part in the overall development of the oil project in Uganda.
This is how we play. Play with power.
This is how we do it.
How we put a team together. This is how we pass on greatness. Because with this team to inspire us, there's nothing we can't do.
Go for goals and win. Buy a Pepsi glass bottle or Pepsi Max 330 ml. Check another crown and win soda, TVs, caps, t-shirts and cash. Redeem prizes at any Pepsi depot or truck countrywide. Terms and conditions apply.
Pepsi, for the love of it.
Pick of the day on UBC. Brought to you by
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odong Talk.
How to get points. Just use MTN to make calls, send SMS, load airtime, buy bundles, or pay for MTN subscription services.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field couldn't be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content